My uncle grabbed my throat at the family barbecue. His voice was a low hiss, laced with the smell of beer and charcoal. You're nothing but a parasite on this family. I couldn't breathe. 30 pairs of eyes, aunts, uncles, cousins, my own parents, stood watching, frozen around the picnic tables and the neatly manicured lawn. What he didn't see, what nobody saw, was my parole officer walking through the side gate. A surprise 4th of July check-in. She put a hand on his shoulder and said 6 words that made the world snap back into focus. 1 second I was reaching into the cooler, the condensation of a soda can cold against my palm. The next, Uncle Kevin's fingers were digging into my windpipe, my feet barely touching the grass. I clawed at his hand, my nails scraping his skin, but his grip was iron. The summer heat pressed down 95 degrees, the kind that makes the air thick and thinking slow. The music from a Bluetooth speaker cut off. You stole from me, he seethed, his face inches from mine, red and sweating. $20,000, you worthless piece of trash. Black spots danced at the edge of my vision. My lungs were on fire. I tried to speak, but all that came out was a wet, choking gurgle. Nobody moved. My mother, Cynthia, turned her head and examined a rose bush like it held the secrets of the universe. My father, Michael, just stared at his worn-out sneakers. My sister, Rachel, covered her mouth, her eyes wide with a fear that did nothing to help me. 30 people. 30 witnesses. Nobody did a thing. Then a voice cut through the suffocating silence. Clear, calm, authoritative. Sir, you need to release her now. Kevin's fingers loosened just enough for me to suck in a ragged, burning breath. Felt like swallowing glass. This is a private family matter, he grunted, not even turning around, his hands still tight on my neck. Assault is my business, she replied. Step back. I knew that voice. Officer Laura Diaz. My parole officer. Kevin's hand finally fell away. I collapsed against the cooler, gasping, coughing, the coppery taste of blood filling my mouth. I must have bitten my tongue. Diaz stood 10 feet away, hand resting on her duty belt. She was in civilian clothes, jeans and a simple polo shirt, but her presence filled the entire yard. I'd forgotten she mentioned a surprise holiday check-in. Making sure I was reintegrating, staying social. Kevin straightened his expensive shirt, puffing out his chest. This criminal stole $20,000 from my business. The lie hung in the air, heavier than the humidity. And from the looks on my family's faces, every single one of them believed him. Officer Diaz's gaze was unreadable behind her sunglasses. She took a step forward, and the invisible circle of space around her seemed to push everyone back. Let me handle this, Kevin. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried an undeniable authority that made my uncle flinch. He opened his mouth to argue, but she just gave a slight shake of her head. He shut it. My throat was raw and I could feel the distinct, throbbing imprint of his fingers. I was 9 months out of prison. 274 days, but who was counting? Me. I was always counting. 2 years inside for prescription fraud. Wasn't what it sounded like. I wasn't some master criminal. I was a stupid kid working as a pharmacy tech who got caught helping a friend forge a script for painkillers. A friend who disappeared the second the cops showed up. The public defender told me to take the plea deal. 2 years instead of a possible 7. So I did. I came home to a family that treated me like a contamination. Job applications went into a black hole. 42 of them in the first 2 months. We'll call you was a polite way of saying we Googled you. Parole was a tightrope walk. Twice weekly meetings with Diaz, random drug tests, a 10 p.m. curfew and the constant humiliating weight of the ankle monitor. It left a permanent groove in my skin. My uncle Kevin owned a chain of successful auto body shops. He was a pillar of the community, a sponsor of little league teams, everything I wasn't. From the day I got out, he'd used me as his personal scapegoat. A missing toolbox from the shop on Elm Street? Must have been Harper. Cash drawer short $50 at the downtown location? Definitely Harper. He never had any proof, but he didn't need it. My record was all the proof my family required. This time was different. This time he sounded sure. He had convinced himself, and in doing so he had convinced everyone else. I looked at my mother, pleading with my eyes. She just wrung her hands, her gaze fixed on the ground. My father cleared his throat and took a sudden interest in the grill. The betrayal was a physical thing, a cold stone in my stomach. They had already convicted me. They always did. It was just easier that way. They chose the comfortable lie over the difficult truth, because the truth would mean they had to look at their own perfect family and see the cracks. It was easier to believe I was the crack. Kevin, seeing Officer Diaz not immediately dismissing him, swelled with confidence. He pulled out his phone, his thumb swiping across the screen with practiced ease. Right here, officer. He stepped toward her, holding out the phone like a holy relic. See for yourself. Electronic transfer. April 10th. $20,000. Sent from my primary business account to a shell account I've never seen before. The signature authorization. It's a perfect digital forgery of my own. I know my niece. She's always been clever with computers. His voice was smooth, reasonable. He was performing, laying out his case for the jury of our family. Diaz took the phone, her expression a blank mask of professionalism. I knew that look. It was the same one she used in our meetings when she was deciding whether I was telling the truth or just spinning another story. My stomach twisted. What if she believed him? What if this was it? Back to county lockup for a violation I didn't even commit. I filed a police report 2 months ago, Kevin continued, his voice rising, gaining momentum. But you know how it is. Things get buried. Especially when a family closes ranks to protect one of their own. He gestured vaguely at my parents. Always protecting her. That was the most insane part. They never protected me. They managed me. They tolerated me. There's a difference. My chest tightened until it felt like Kevin's hand was back around my throat. I looked from face to face. My mother, my father, my sister Rachel. They all had the same expression. A sort of resigned disappointment. They believed him. Of course they believed him. Why wouldn't they? It fit the narrative they had all written for me. I was the screw-up, the black sheep, the felon. A voice inside my own head started to whisper. Did I do it? Could I have done it and not remembered? The thought was insane, but the weight of their judgment was a physical force, pressing down on me, making me doubt my own mind. That's what they do to you. They tell you who you are for so long that eventually, you start to believe them. My cousin Jordan, Kevin's son, stood by the drink table. The golden boy. Business degree. A management job waiting for him at his dad's company. He looked pale. His girlfriend, Samantha, a quiet girl who worked as a receptionist at one of the shops, looked like she was going to be sick. She clutched Jordan's arm, her knuckles white. I didn't understand why. All I could focus on was the sinking feeling that my life was over. Officer Diaz didn't look up from Kevin's phone. She just asked a simple question, her voice cutting through my internal panic. Harper, where were you on April 10th? The date hung in the air. April 10th. My mind was a blank. A fog of meaningless days. Parole check-ins, job hunting, lonely nights in my tiny apartment. I don't remember. My voice was a hoarse whisper. My throat felt like it was closing up again. Think Kevin sneered. Or did that time in prison damage more than just your reputation? I tried. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to picture a calendar, trying to find an anchor in the blur of the past few months. April. It was cold for April. I remember being annoyed because my car's heater was broken. I worked my shift at the diner. I came home. That was every day. It was nothing. I started to say, you were robbing me blind. Kevin shouted, turning to the family, his audience. He's a convicted felon. It's what she does. Leopards don't change their spots. My hands were shaking so hard I had to clench them into fists. I didn't do it. Don't you dare lie to me. You're a thief. Always have been. Remember when you were 12 and you took that $50 bill from my wallet? I had found it on the floor of his car. I tried to give it back and he'd accused me of stealing it then too. That was the moment it clicked. A memory so sharp and sudden it felt like a physical blow. A parole violation isn't just a suggestion. It's a hard line. Missing a check-in, failing a drug test, even being late for curfew. It's an automatic trip back to county lockup. No trial, no judge, just a swift, bureaucratic consequence. The rules are the rules. That's what Diaz always said. County lockup, I said, my voice quiet but clear. Officer Diaz finally looked up from the phone. What did you say? I was in county lockup. April 8th through April 22nd. The color drained from my uncle's face. It was magnificent. Technical violation. I missed my April 7th check-in. I told her. My car broke down on the interstate. She said the rules are the rules. You picked me up yourself. You drove me there. That's impossible, Kevin stammered. The transfer was April 10th. You authorized it. Harper's right, Diaz said. She pulled out her own department-issued phone, tapped the screen a few times. I personally transported her to the Riverside County Detention Center on April 8th at 9:30 in the morning. She was in custody for 14 days. She turned her phone to show Kevin the screen. The detention log. Visual. Inmate number 73491. Harper Mitchell. Admitted April 8th. Released April 22nd. It was all there. Timestamps. Signatures. An ironclad, officially documented, undeniable alibi. The silence that fell over the backyard was absolute. The buzzing of a fly sounded like a chainsaw. Kevin stared at the phone in Officer Diaz's hand, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. No sound came out. Someone's cell phone started ringing a tinny pop song, and the person fumbled to silence it. My cousin Jordan suddenly let out a strangled cough, nearly choking on his drink. His girlfriend Samantha, who was still attached to his arm, went from pale to ghost white. Her eyes were wide with pure panic. So Diaz said, her voice dangerously calm as she put her phone away. Harper was in a locked cell at the county detention center. Who really took your money, Kevin? All eyes swiveled from me to Jordan. He set his cup down on the table, but his hands were shaking so badly that it rattled against the wood. I have to go, he stammered, backing away toward the fence. It was my Aunt Heather, Kevin's wife. Her voice was sharp. Why do you look so guilty? I'm not. He kept backing away, bumping into a lawn chair. He needed the money for his gambling debts. The words exploded out of Samantha. She was sobbing now. Online poker. He lost over $30,000. He made me help him forge the transfer. He used his dad's passwords and banking codes. He said everyone would just blame Harper anyway. He said because of her record nobody would even question it. And then Jordan ran. He just turned and bolted, scrambling through the side gate. A moment later we heard the roar of his sports car, a graduation present from Kevin. The squeal of tires, and he was gone. The backyard erupted into chaos. Aunt Heather let out a scream that was pure agony. Someone dropped a glass plate and it shattered on the patio. Officer Diaz didn't even flinch. She just took a deliberate step toward my uncle. Her hand went to her belt, not for her weapon but for the set of steel handcuffs clipped there. Kevin, you just committed felony assault in front of a law enforcement officer. He stumbled backward into the picnic table. Hands behind your back. Please, officer, this is a misunderstanding. No. My mother stood frozen. Her face was a mask of shock, her mouth slightly open. I remembered when I was 7, a bigger kid pushed me off the swings at the park. My mother had stormed over, her voice like thunder, and tore into that kid's parents until they were practically apologizing for being born. She had been a lioness. Now she was just a statue. A silent witness to my demolition. The cold, metallic click of the handcuffs snapping around Kevin's wrists was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a world breaking. You filed a false report and you assaulted a parolee, Diaz said, her voice like ice. The legal consequences for that are severe. Far more severe than if you'd attacked a regular citizen. You just tried to send an innocent woman back to prison. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Jordan was picked up less than an hour later trying to cross the state line. Samantha, granted immunity, gave a full confession, handing over encrypted chats and bank records that painted a perfect picture of a premeditated crime. Kevin was facing years in prison for the assault, for filing a false report, and for perjury. The DA was determined to make an example of him. The state ordered full restitution. 2 weeks after the barbecue, a check arrived in my mailbox from the district attorney's office. $20,000. It felt unreal holding that piece of paper. More money than I had ever seen in one place. My phone had been blowing up with calls and texts. My mother. Harper, honey, we need to talk. We didn't know. My father, I am so sorry, son. I should have stood up for you. My sister, I was scared, Harper. I'm a coward. I'm sorry. I read them all one by one and then I blocked their numbers. Every single one. It wasn't about anger anymore. It was about peace. They hadn't just been silent. They had been complicit. They had watched him choke me and their silence was a vote. They had voted against me. There was one number I didn't block. It came a few days later from an unknown number. It was Samantha. I'm so sorry for what I did. I was afraid of him. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. I thought about it for a long time. Then I got another text. It was from Officer Diaz. Thought you should know. It was Samantha who sent the anonymous tip about Kevin's behavior. That's why I decided to do a surprise check-in on the 4th. She knew something bad was going to happen. She was scared, but she still tried to help you. I looked back at Samantha's message and then I typed a reply. You did the right thing when it mattered most. That's all that counts. 6 months later, my life is unrecognizable. I used the restitution money to put a down payment on a small condo on the other side of the state. I enrolled in a local college, studying to be a veterinary technician. I have a job at an animal clinic that I love. Last month I had my final meeting with Officer Diaz. She signed my discharge papers. Early release for good behavior. You're officially a free woman, Harper, she said, shaking my hand. No more check-ins. No more ankle monitor. You earned this. My family still sends letters. They're in a box in my closet, unopened. Maybe someday I'll read them. But for now, I've found a peace that isn't about forgiveness. It's about freedom. Freedom from their judgment. Freedom from the person they tried to make me. Freedom to finally be myself.